Compassion or compensation, and the elders and the community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. This morning, afternoon, or evening, depending where you are, we have the lovely Tiffany Callender. She's the Chief Executive Officer of FACE Coalition. Thank you so much, Tiffany, for being here with us. And without further ado, just want you to have this time to share a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself to the audience, and tell us a little bit about your remarkable work.
Thank you so much, Chope, and thank you to everybody. Good day. As you mentioned, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. First, I'd like to thank SETSI for having me. Again, I've participated last year as well in this important conference. I love the ability to have dialogue and connect all corners of the world. And I think that that's one of the things that this conference brings to the fore. And I'm glad to be here with you guys this morning. As mentioned, my name is Tiffany Callender. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Federation of African Canadian Economics, which we lovingly call the FACE Coalition. Our organization started during the pandemic when looking at what needed to exist in order for Black businesses to not only survive the pandemic, but to thrive. In mobilizing with other leaders across the country who had worked on different economic development strategies, we had a conversation with the federal government that turned into a co-design, which became Canada's first and historic Black entrepreneurship program, which was an initial investment of $330 million. Of that, I manage $160 million, which is the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund. Again, first of its nature, where we lend capital to Black businesses across the country up to $250,000. And this initiative is one that is very important because it is not only governed by the Black community, it is administered by the Black community in the interest of the Black community, where investments will eventually help our long-term outcomes as a community. Within that program, the Black Entrepreneurship Program, I work with many ecosystem partners to be able to deliver on our promise in this world, to be able to set a destiny and a course for ourselves where we're able to create the best future possible opportunities for us and our children. So the mission of FACE is to be the catalyst for generational wealth for Black Canadians. About myself, I would say I've been doing this work for over 20 years, which is always shocking when I say it out loud. And I've worked exclusively serving the Black community my entire adult life. So I started off in Montreal working at Bell Mobility and took a hard turn out of that into the nonprofit sector and decided that that's where I would want to execute my life's mission. I think I speak about a career, but it's really and truly what I believe is a calling to work with others who would like to see equality and equity executed through a community that has been historically pushed to the limit and the margins of the greater society in the world. So I think that is it. The only thing that I would probably add there is that working in communion with others, I think, is very important. There's a reason why we call the Federation of African Canadian Economics the FACE Coalition. I believe the biggest lesson our community has to learn at this time when thinking about equity-focused initiatives in order to change systems is that we have to learn to collaborate, use each other's strengths, positioning, opportunities to move towards a collective goal. And that's why I'm here this morning, because sustainable finance and social finance are big vehicles and opportunities to do so collaboratively. I am a mother of 3 children who I raised lovingly and with the hope that someday they will decide what their contribution will be to the community and society. So that's my real job, mommy.
Oh, that's a very important job, Tiffany. So don't downplay it. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And FACE Coalition has become a driving force in accelerating wealth creation for Canadians of African descent. What inspired you to co-found this transformative initiative?
I would say if I go from the larger scope down to the specific strategy and why we implemented it. As I mentioned, I've worked 20 years exclusively serving the Black community from Montreal. I'm a real Montrealer, born, raised, and stayed. and then had kids here. So I consider myself a true blue Montrealer. And working with specifically the English-speaking Black community, which is a double minority group here in Quebec, language invisible, I understood that there are a lot of things that we try to address to create a better trajectory for Black people and their families. I worked on youth initiatives, family initiatives, senior initiatives, school, housing, you name it. But at the baseline of that, on the bottom, I guess the throughput or the thing that would actually change some of the unfortunate and unfair outcomes that we see in those different elements is economic strength. What we don't have or what we need to work on is a more coordinated, strengthened, and I would say Black-driven economic strategy that allows for us to be able to exercise certain freedoms and also to safeguard against certain systemic issues that face us over the last decades and years and such. So that's the reason why. Now, why this particular strategy is because when we saw the federal government rolling out a response for entrepreneurs across the country during COVID, there was a particular program called the Canadian Emergency Bank Account. We looked at the criteria or the eligibility for business owners to have access to that through financial institutions. And we knew, by the way, our nano and micro-sized businesses, which is the larger part of the businesses that are in our community, they would not qualify for the eligibility criteria that was set. So that means that we had to speak to what needed to change or what needed to coexist in order for Black entrepreneurs to be able to have access in that particular difficult time, which is the pandemic. But overall, because we have a long-standing issue in terms of access to capital and resources to develop businesses. So that's what encouraged me to do that, because at the time, the specific strategy met the need where businesses were under threat in terms of their ability to continue to function and manage because of the pandemic. But in the larger scale, we needed to have economic strategies that allow for us to control the management of capital and development and investment.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. So the $160 million Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund represents a landmark partnership with the federal government. What lessons have you learned from its implementation thus far?
What I've learned so far, and I think I've always known that, and this is just a very demonstrative opportunity for us to put it in the history books, that Black people have the expertise and ability to build strategies that can respond to their needs. And it takes government to align, trust, and become supportive in those initiatives and allow for the conditions that need to exist for those things to thrive. So when we look at the $160 million loan fund, which has now been renewed for the next 5 years, and there has been an increase in the capital contribution. So to break down that 160 million, one contributor or the main investor is the Government of Canada with $30 million, which is under the management of FACE Coalition, our organization. And then there's a contribution from the BDC of 130 million. A few weeks ago, Minister Valdez announced that an additional $37 million would be put under the administration of FACE Coalition, taking our loan fund to $67 million. So for me, what I've learned is that when we collaborate to design solutions based off of not only our lived experience, but also our actual institutional knowledge, I have to take a moment to recognize that the Black Business Initiative, which is in Halifax, which is an organization that is now 30 years old, which was run for a large part under the stewardship of Rustam Southwell. That was our first model in Canada of a Black loan fund. And when you take those learnings and you're able to say, how do we scale that nationally, because it was a regional project, how do we ensure that we infuse technology and the current context and bring in new partners? This is how you build models that you can test, evaluate, and then, of course, innovate, because there are obviously other capital gaps and facilities that are required for Black entrepreneurs to have all of the tools that they need to run their businesses, but you have to start somewhere. And our choice was to start with term loans, and we'll continue to work with our partners to innovate and find other facilities that are required for businesses to grow under the right context, and most importantly, without an extractive framework that puts them in a precarious situation.
So, beyond access to capital, what other structural barriers do Black entrepreneurs continue to face, and how is FACE working to address them?
Well, I've always said that capital is one of the challenges, but it is not the only one. There are four
Mm,
main pillars that have to be addressed for entrepreneurs to be able to thrive. It's access to good, sound information. It's access to a network. It is access to mentors and sponsors, and then it is access to capital. So when we think about what the Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund does, it addresses one of the pillars that needs to be strengthened and available to entrepreneurs. It's capital. But the thing that is also still required and necessary is for entrepreneurs to continue to have access to quality information. What do I mean by that? I mean, do they have access to experts or professionals or models that allow for them to build sound businesses from inception? So what we have often is entrepreneurs who have an idea, who have a concept, and they build the business, but what they need to do is ensure that the right setting of the foundation of that business would allow for it to scale and for it to fall into compliance, right? So we don't want to
mhm.
create an issue down the road when we can address it at the top, but you need good information to do that, and you need supports to do that. And where you typically find that good core information is if you're a part of the right networks. So this is where expanded resources and what we call an ecosystem is required, where you have organizations, actors, accelerators, all of the things that would help an entrepreneur to move step by step on that journey to be able to build their business from inception all the way until actual market. I want to take a quick pause there, and maybe this will come up in the questions or in the discussion. We also have to be mindful that when we think about entrepreneurship, if it is new to an individual or it is something that they are now considering, what floats often in our community is the jargon, right? So when you hear entrepreneur, then you hear like these companies have to scale, you hear like investors, you hear 10x, all of the jargon comes with it. But there's a difference between an entrepreneur and a business owner. And I think we need to start to have the conversation in our community about what is the difference and where do I fit? If I want to be a business owner, it could be that I need to look at what are my personal strengths? What am I able to contribute to the idea of owning a business? Maybe I'm going to acquire a business. I have this conversation often with partners is that there is approximately 100,000 businesses in Canada that are going to close. Baby boomers who have built good, strong businesses that have operated for decades, they've got a good client book, they're making good revenue. Who's buying these companies, right? So maybe it's not about being an entrepreneur or a founder to start a business. Maybe it's about ensuring you have the skills, capital, and ability to buy a business. That makes you a business owner. So I know I'm going off on a tangent, but I want to make sure that we start to have these conversations because often lexicon and jargon makes us think about entrepreneurship in a very linear, one size fits all way. And it's often influenced by Silicon Valley because that is the trend. Tech, scale, 10x, all you hear all the stuff. But guess what? You might own 3 laundromats and have a really good life. You know what I mean? And that's okay. And I think we need to start to broaden that conversation. I digress. Networks. Then from that network, you might be able to find a sponsor and a mentor. Two different things. One can be both, but let me explain the difference. If you have a mentor, this is somebody that might not be in your sector, has been in business, and you can talk to them about the journey of entrepreneurship. This is your sounding board. You can test things against them. Maybe they're able to help you think through certain elements and also keep you accountable. A sponsor is different. A mentor can be a sponsor, but a sponsor is different. A sponsor is somebody that takes you into their larger network and says, I trust this person, you can do business with them. And I want this person to have an opportunity. So they're leveraging their social capital and their influence to allow for you to have access to a market to be able to scale your company and your client base. And the last thing, like I mentioned, is capital. At FACE, we do term loans, but there's a lot of different things that are required by entrepreneurs. At one stage, they might need grants to start off, depending on the sector they're in. They might need to look at different facilities. A term loan is a fixed monthly payment over time. You might need a line of credit. You might need to start off with a credit card, depending on the type of business that you have. And then you might want to look into, well, I need more capital to scale. Do I go the investment route? Do I look at revenue-based financing? Like there's a lot of conversation we need to have to what the capital journey of Black entrepreneurs will look like in this country, and make sure again that they're shaped by our community with the context, the historical context of what it means to enable them to have access. That was a long answer, Sophie. You got to cut me off or I will chat.
No, absolutely. We don't want to cut you off. We want to hear it, and we want from somebody who knows what they're talking about. This is such good information for everybody who is on the line today. So how does FACE identify and support entrepreneurs with high growth potential? And what role does mentorship and ecosystem navigation play in their success?
So I think FACE has a very unique position, and it's exciting for us because with a portfolio, we've approved over 700 businesses. We're at about 72 million approved at FACE. We have a pretty dense portfolio that we've built over the last 4 years. But what that also gives us, as we continue to work with entrepreneurs, annual reviews are done, we're able to see the growth of these companies. We're able to see what revenue they're generating, what their profit line, so top line, bottom line. We're able to see how many jobs they create. So we get a very interesting angle and an opportunity to advise these companies of things that they may want to consider in the next stage of growth, whom they should see. So this is again directing them towards potential networks where they might identify mentors or support. So I think our POV is very interesting because I don't know previously of an institution that could give a sample or a lens to the trends that are occurring for Black businesses across the country and across different sectors, because we do not have a concentration in our portfolio, meaning you have all types of businesses that are in our portfolio. I know the tech people are on the call. Not us. Well, yes, you're pre-revenue. So unfortunately, only tech companies who are generating revenue can typically have a term loan to be serviced. But we're working on that of how do we help, and BKR is on it, and other groups are on it to help tech founders be able to have the capital that they need. So all of that to say that with our POV, we're able to advise, but more importantly, we're able to give feedback to the Black ecosystem and the larger ecosystem of where the gaps are in terms of what do Black entrepreneurs need access to continue their growth journey for their companies. So if we know there's a shortage, I'm going to pretend, of mentors. A lot of our entrepreneurs in conversations with our ERMs are saying, I feel like I'm working in isolation. I don't really have anybody I can talk to. We can then be a sounding board to the larger community, to universities who are studying this. We have the Black Knowledge Hub that's there. The Diversity Institute does work around Black entrepreneurship. It's how do we feed to them and have them understand what we are hearing from our entrepreneurs. And that gives the opportunity for the model of service to Black entrepreneurs to diversify, because we can't do everything. I tell people all the time, let us do our thing well, and then you take something and go do it well, so that we're able to put that together. And we're not, I don't want to be, I like books. So The Art of War, you never put everything in one position. You can't align your whole entire strategy in one place. That's sure risk for failure. But if we continue to collaborate, communicate, and develop based on our expertise, we will build a holistic ecosystem that will respond in a relevant way to Black entrepreneurs and their reality.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. As Canada's economic landscape evolves, what innovative approaches can be used to foster sustainable wealth building and intergenerational prosperity in Black communities?
Okay, so that's a big question. So here's what we know. we and again, let's zoom out and take a snapshot of the world right now. Canada has maintained, despite what we're seeing south of us and in some parts of the world, a lens on what it is to invest in the social capital of its people. How do we maximize on the social, human capital that exists within our country to develop strategies that will create opportunities for equity? It's not perfect, but we're doing better than most. Okay, that's what I would definitely say. And the opportunity that we have, and you can see it in the print of what the government deposits as opportunities, but we have to interpret it and then get in where we fit in. So the budget came out under the Carney administration, first budget. And when I read the budget, I'm looking at where it is in this big plan of Canada First that we are going to position ourselves to be a part of that growth. nobody's going to invite you. You've got to figure out where you fit. So the key things that I noticed was one, a high inference on procurement. The Carney administration has said that now a focus on small and medium-sized businesses be able to have procurement opportunities within this country is important. It is mandated, and that's important because if we're saying Canada first, and we want to do business with Canadians, and the biggest employer and the biggest B2G opportunity you can have is with a government. And we're going to see how that shapes out. There were previous attempts to refine this. I think there are models that are coming together, but that's one that I look at. Small to export. Now, an emphasis again from this government to help Canadian businesses grow and scale and export outside of the country. Where do we fit in that? What is our leverage point? In our portfolio alone, there is 36 countries represented in terms of who we lend to. Now, that means that those individuals have a country of origin where they may, depending on what their product and service is, could be an ambassador, and we have to start to look at ourselves like that, into those countries where our country is focusing on creating new trade agreements. Are we just going to wait for those things to develop, or can we help by being a demonstrative piece around how business and trade can be done with other countries? I think that there's a necessity for our community to, yes, build in and with each other, but to always look at what the larger opportunity is, because the ultimate proof factor is, are we actually contributing to our country's GDP? Are we able to prove our value in the economy by not in an anecdotal way, but in an actual figures, numbers and figures way? And I believe that with the right strategies and leveraging the right partners to do that, we can begin to show that value to the larger context, within the larger Canadian context. I hope that answers your question. I know it was a little bit broader than maybe your question was defined, but that's what comes to mind.
So how can private sector investors, funders, and community organizations collaborate more effectively to create inclusive economic systems?
So there's a few things. One of the things that I miss from, I'm going to call it the United States of yesteryear, because I don't know what to call the United States right now. What you saw previously, I think some with good intention, there were corporate entities that have committed themselves to supporting community-based initiatives, not by just talking it or being performative, but have actually put real dollars behind particular initiatives. If you think about the National Urban League, if you think about organizations that have been in existence for a long time and they've had dedicated corporate partners who are aligned around equity and creating fairness in the market, we need more of that in Canada. I think that we love an in-kind service, but there's only so much in-kind service that you can turn into actual development strategies. So I think there needs to be a little bit of a shift there in how corporate Canada, how Bay Street sees itself interacting and interfacing, pun intended, with the community. The other thing that I would say in terms of private sector, and I'm going to throw in philanthropy, I'm going to throw in private families, is that looking for vehicles that make it their mission to ensure that we answer the S in ESG. I think that we have a gap in terms of how and where are we investing dollars to ensure that there is an actual social or measurable social outcomes in creating equity. So when we say, for example, FACE is a strategy that is addressing the S in ESG. We are saying we are going to invest dollars into a community to make social impact, and we're going to measure that. How many businesses are started? How many businesses are safeguarded? How many jobs are created? How much impact are we making in terms of the general economy? What is the ripple effect of these businesses in communities? Are they revitalizing communities? So these are all things that we can measure by a project like FACE and a project like BKR and a project like, and I could go on and on and on. So I think that where they can get involved is actually understanding the thesis of a lot of these different vehicles and programs, because they will bring to life what the S in ESG is. I think we see a lot of environmental over the years. We've seen great strides in ensuring that we address the the ecology and the environment of our world. And we've seen great innovation and great investment go there. But I think that people are the first step in ensuring that we have a safe, sound, full, healthy world. And I think that we have to make sure that they elevate the S in ESG.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your response with us. And so, in your experience, what policies or frameworks have the greatest impact in promoting equity and financial empowerment for historically underserved communities?
Well, again, the United States of yonder yesteryear. We saw community development financial institutions, a great model that was structured in the U.S. for many years, cut under the current administration. But alive and well here, right? FACE is one of the initiatives that allows for us to transform public dollars into developmental tools for a particular community. I'm going to stay again with Canada. The Social Finance Fund is an opportunity to ensure that marginalized communities are focused on. I think it's important that that mandate, which was focusing on Indigenous women, Black, those who are differently abled communities, are given the opportunity to grow initiatives and to scale them because they respond to their social impact companies and nonprofits. So we have to, I think, look at what's happening at home first. Our federal government has demonstrated some initiatives. If we look at the Black Philanthropic Fund with FFBC, Big Ideas is exactly that, a big idea, where investing in nonprofits who typically don't have the startup funds to be able to launch big ideas in their community, that's an opportunity. So I think that if you look over the last 5 to 7 years, our country is unique because over $1.2 billion has been invested in Black communities, led by Black communities. Is it enough to level and balance the inequity we've seen over the centuries? No, but I am a big proponent of we need to start somewhere. And we need to use these resources wisely and responsibly, because as we build institutions, we don't build programs, folks, we build institutions. They can last the stead of time. We have to take a cue, and I love the Indigenous communities model with NACA. That's a 30-year project, I think it's 3.5 billion under asset, now have broken out into a procurement, a vehicle. They've got their own Indigenous Growth Fund. They've built out the institutions that serve their community's interests. We have to do the same. And they started off, and I'm just using FACE as an example. They started off with a $25 million contribution from the federal government 30 years ago. 4 years ago, the federal government invested 30 million at FACE. So the question is, over the test of time, are we going to be able to build the same fortitude in terms of an institution? And what will be our report card 10, 20 years from now? This idea of things happening with individuals and particular camps, no, it's all of our responsibility. Because if NACA did not do what it needed to do, its entire community would not benefit. So when I want to put an emphasis, if I could do a digital, it's capital O-U-R, our.
Absolutely, that we should all take ownership and responsibility of this. I completely agree with you. I want to take this back to something. This is going to be more a personal question, personal interest. So, Black women entrepreneurs are often faced by compounded barriers related to race, gender, and caregiving. How is FACE intentionally responding to these intersecting barriers? What do you think the ecosystem needs to center Black women in sustainable finance conversations?
That's a great question. I'm going to switch hats and go to my program design days when I was on the other side. So now on the capital side, my job was to make sure that our fund is available to all members of our community, women, men, youth, LGBTQ plus, everybody, and we track the investment to be able to say where we are. I'm proud to say that we're over 30% investment in women-led businesses. We need to do more. And I need women to come and bring us more loans under their names. Now, how do we increase the number of women who are loan ready and are finance ready? Well, that comes to the ecosystem piece. So when you're dealing with design and you take, again, it's about bringing relevant context to the work that we do because of our understanding of our lived experience. And it can be personal or it can be immediate. We know that in general, women carry the burden of care. Our particular generation. So I'm a zennial. I'm smack in the middle of Gen X and the millennial. But the burden of care there, which is very specific, is that we're the standard generation. We're raising children while taking care of aging parents. So understanding that and understanding that women in society carry a larger burden of care. Fellas, I'm not leaving you out. I know that you help. I know that you're there, but that's just the reality of things. We have to design programming that will meet women where they are as they manage this complexity of family life, work-life balance. So if you are the caretaker of children and maybe gradually having to take on more and more responsibilities with aging parents or caregivers, that people who took care of you, plus managing a career that is bringing in your income with the added benefit of trying to start a business, how do we make the learning curve and access point easier for women? Do we need to make sure that we can create asynchronous learning, that they can learn on their own time and then join virtual supports at times that are opportunistic for them? If we're going to create in-person opportunities, are we going to make sure that there's caregiving there for their children to come? Yes. Are we making sure that we're designing in a way where we are removing as many barriers within our control for women to fully participate? Are we ensuring that we are creating carve-outs and targets within our funding streams to make sure that women are given the opportunity to access fairly, and obviously having to meet criteria and all of these things, but we are intentional in ensuring that those investments go there. Because what I can tell you about entrepreneurship, and I wrote an article about this, my grandmothers were both entrepreneurs in their own right, is that without my grandmother's entrepreneurial spirit in the 40s and 50s, she would not have been able to produce a mother that was able to move to this country to be able to have for me to have my kids. So that structure that I think about is like, how much further could my grandmother have gone if she had the right supports to really understand from her natural ability how to run a business, to then be able to structure it to something that could actually compete and scale in the market. Some people come with that naturally, but I think that we can level the playing field by design, how we develop the design. So when we talked about quality information and networks, how do we make sure that we get those to women who we consciously understand have a different burden in society, which is a caregiver?
Thank you so much for sharing that, because that's again, this is something that I'm curious about myself, and you made some incredible points, because I do think that there is a lot that women are carrying as caregivers, and but also wanting to be entrepreneurs, and I think oftentimes we may feel like we are struggling to break through just because of the other things that we are managing to juggle. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're absolutely correct. But I think that there's also something, I'm talking to all the sisters on this call. And one of our sisters in Quebec says it best, Dorothy Rowe. She says in French, il faut être audacieuse. You have to be audacious. You have to be somebody who, men, no judgment, fellas. Men can have 20% of the information that they need to try something and boldly step into it and try it. Not afraid of making the errors, not afraid of the learning curve, not afraid of, and the reason why is because their risk tolerance is different than ours, because society has also told them to risk, right?
Yes.
I've met women who have 80% of what they need to go and go, well, I don't have the extra 20%, so I shouldn't go. You're waiting on 100% to do something? Says what? Says who? Says? You can, by design, go and learn at the same time. If you think about it, we do it all the time, right? Even in our personal lives. So I also have to say, women need to understand that they have to take on more risk to be able to step into the framework of being a business owner or an entrepreneur. And I understand it sometimes feels like risk on risk, right? And I am a mom. I am a single mom. I'm doing all of this stuff, but you've got to make I had to take risks to get to where I am in my career. I had to take risks to say, yeah, never existed before. Loan fund. Yeah, let's do that. let's go ahead with that. Let's build that and get it off the ground in 4.5 months. And you have to. That is a part of the nature of it. It doesn't mean the risks are not calculated. It doesn't mean that the risks are not measured and you manage risk. Risk management is a part of life, but you have to be audacious. You have to decide you're going to do it, because men jump. We look and then we still need to jump.
Yeah.
That's my point.
I think that that's an incredible point, and resonated deeply with myself, because I think it's so true. I think that we take a lot of time we think through things and plan through things and want to be essentially at a place where we think things are perfect and ready to launch at that point. And that's just not the nature of entrepreneurship or innovation, to be quite honest.
Perfection
And
is a mirage. Perfection is a mirage. Don't do that.
it
You'll end
doesn't
up
exist.
thirsty in the desert. Just go at it.
Exactly. So thank you so much for answering that question. It's going to stay with me personally, and I'm sure with many other people and women in particular who are on this line today. Um, I wanted to ask another question about FACE. So I know that FACE sits at a very unique intersection between Black communities and major financial institutions. What have you learned about building authentic partnerships with banks and credit unions? And what still needs to change in how these institutions show up in Black communities?
Power dynamics and control.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think about what the government did, it said, okay, Black communities have identified a longstanding issue. They have a plan of how they're going to execute it. They're going to mobilize the expertise within their community to build a model that responds to their particular needs. We trust that, and we are balancing the power dynamic by saying, you guys are in the driver's seat. There are conditions. You do have to respond to certain criteria and you have to stay within certain compliance, but the decision making is yours of how you're going to serve. Institutions are not there, and I understand why. Corporate institutions have stakeholders, and their stakeholders are expecting profit margins that they protect because they have individual or particular interests. With a government program, obviously the interest is the population that it's serving in this particular instance. In working with corporate Canada and financial institutions, it is where they see fit to gain and to maybe experience some loss. And let me explain. If you're going to have a higher risk tolerance than your credit box, meaning you've defined what risk is based on your lens and your stakeholders' desires and what you want as outcomes, if you really want to make change, to gain on the change, you're going to have to acquire a little bit more risk. But that takes the ability for the institution to wholly commit to understanding that the reality for some is not the reality for all. So the amendment or the adjustment is to allow for what I call in my world, opening up the risk aperture to let more people come in to have a long-term outcome that you want. In the short term, there will be growing pains. It will look riskier than what you usually do, but here's the news. What you usually do keeps a lot of people out of your system. So you've got to be willing to challenge the system to create a space where more people can come in, and with the right design, able to help them to a long-term outcome that we can say, this is how the system has changed and this is how it has grown. What we have is locked systems, and we need to make a change. When you think about what's coming with open banking, change needs to happen. So it's happening systemically. And again, I come back to my earlier point. We have to be positioned to be a part of the change and not just let the change happen around us. And I think that that's the difference in what we are seeing across this country in people standing up and into strategy versus sidelining and watching strategies occur that will affect them short and long term. Let's roll up our sleeves and get involved, understand what's happening in the broader context, and make sure we're positioned to leverage it to reach us in a way that's positive.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, for sharing that with us. Uh, so I want to turn this is going to be a lot more personal. So you're going to dig deep for us, please. I know that you carry so much on your shoulders as a public face of this work. What are some practices and community supports that help you to stay grounded and keep going, especially when the work is so emotionally and politically demanding?
Ooh, yeah, how much time you got? Okay. um, okay, so there's a few things. A long time ago in my career, I learned that when you choose a mission as your career, so I'm talking about your life mission, it is very personal and it is I cannot go home and turn off at 100% the work that I do, because it directly touches me, right? I know my history, I know my culture, I know my people, I know, and I want them to have level playing field. I want them to have access to the tools. I want to see them excel in the potential that I see in them. Society may not see it, but I see it. I see it in my cousins. I see it in my neighbors. I see it in my community. I see it. So you don't put that down. I always say, if I wanted to put it down, I would have worked at, the most generic organization ever. So at 5 o'clock, boop, I turn it off. But I go to sleep Black and I wake up Black and I have Black children, and so we go. So I've learned that I may not be able to turn it off, but I have to step away. And sometimes the step away might be interpreted as me being distant, but it's not that. I have to take back my charge. And it's very charged to work for your community, in the interest of your community, to achieve it is very, very charged. And those who do this work alongside me and with me, I know that they understand what I'm saying. So if you sometimes don't see me around and about, it's because I'm taking back my charge. I have to call back into myself so that I can show up in a way that's consistent in the mission. My favorite, and I honestly believe that's why God saw fit to make me a mom, because there's nothing you guys could be doing outside that'll call me away from my kids. When I'm with them, I'm with them. So I think that's the counterbalance. It's like, when I'm doing the work, I'm doing the work. But when I'm with my babies, I'm with my babies. And they give me a chance to laugh and be silly and take naps and eat things I'm not supposed to in my 40s and all kinds of things. And I also figured out that I have to speak about the weight. You've got to find trusted people who have either been a part of this journey, have done their lap in this journey or this race, or even people who have nothing to do with it. My best friend has no idea what I do. She's like, but you do cool stuff, Tiff, and I love you. Let's sit down and have this cheesecake. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, like, I have to make time for that, because she allows for me to discharge. She doesn't really know what I'm saying, but she just knows she's listening, and she wants to make sure that I'm good and I'm okay. And I would say all of that comes from source. That's God's guidance. That's the ancestors' guidance. That's my grandparents' guidance. That's like everything that I hear that the rest of the world doesn't hear in my head and in my heart. That's what it's telling me to do. Rest, take back your charge, go giggle at something foolish, be with your babies, have that cheesecake with your bestie, come back to us full, because the mission is what it is, but you are a person and you need to remember that. So that's how I do it. And I really like tea. So if you came to my house and you saw the amount of different types of teas, you might be like, she's a little weird. I'm not. I am diversifying the moments of calm and warmth that I have. So if ever you want to get me a gift, buy me some tea.
That's so beautiful. And someone just said in the chat that self-care is love, and it's so true. And
I can't love the community if I don't love myself, and I can't love on the community if I don't love on myself. So it is an exchange. something will get depleted. So you got to fill it up.
Absolutely. Yeah, you absolutely cannot pour from an empty cup. And that's just what someone put in the chat.
Yeah,
So
look at that timing.
we're all on the same page here, which is wonderful. It's not possible.
Yeah.
I'm trying to debate whether or not I ask you another question, or if I go into my final question. I do want to ask a question though for younger leaders. So for younger leaders who want to build careers at the intersection of community, finance, and policy, what advice would you give them? And what do you wish someone had told you early on?
Oh, wow. I always say I was guided to this work. I studied in communications. I was at one point I was moving to New York to take Free's job on 106 in Park. For those of you who are old enough, you know what I'm saying.
Oh my
I
God.
wanted to be the next Oprah. That was what I was going to do. It was going to be communications, and something took me a hard left into the nonprofit sector, specifically working with my community. I think for a young person who's choosing this work, which is, like you said, the intersection of policy, system work, if it is finance, it could be other elements too. You have to understand that your contribution and your ability to lead, shape, influence is not just going to be on your personal resume. When I think of the accomplishments that I've been able to make and the mistakes I've made, all of those things go on a larger scoreboard. And I think about the larger scoreboard more than I think about my particular scoreboard. And it's understanding that you're literally picking the hardest space to work in, because it's yours and it needs to change, right? If you really understand your history and you understand systemically what was done to us, around us, it's a different thing. So in the last couple of years, we've seen an emerging demonstration of the confidence of being Black in corporate spaces and in different spaces. All of that is beautiful and amazing, because who's hiding in plain sight? Nobody. But at the same time, the surface of it can look one way, but what we need to do is get down to the root of it, because you can have something that looks like it's healthy, but when you get down under it, it's really got illness that we need to be erode in order to be able to get to something that is stable and growing. It's one thing to survive and maintain. It's another thing to be well and to thrive and to grow. And I think that that's where we are going. Every generation has had people who have contributed to that. If you're going to choose that, know that it is not just your personal scoreboard or your scorecard. It is the collective scorecard that you're working towards. And that has to be almost like your North Star in this work. You'll lose yourself. And more importantly, you'll turn around one day and go, I lost a lot more than what I was aiming for. And I didn't get the full opportunity to put a point on the board for my community.
Thank you so much for your insights and sharing that with us. And, finally, I want to ask, what call to action would you share with the investors? Would you share with investors, policymakers, and allies committed to advancing equitable economic empowerment?
Trust us when we say what we need.
Yes.
I think that the desire to support and help is a good one, but you have to know where you are putting your efforts, and that has to be guided by the people that you are trying to support. Black people are not short of talent, innovation, expertise, vision, resilience, know-how, grit. I mean, name it, like we've got it. The reality of it is that the system has created barriers for us to be able to access and extract what we need to enforce and amplify those things. You want to be helpful? Believe us when we tell you what we need. We'll prove it. Yeah. We're used to having to double down, dog prove it. We can't just be good. We've got to be great. We've heard all these things, right, guys? That's not new to us. It's allowing for us to be in the driver's seat for our futures.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. And That's all the time that we have for today. Thank you so very much for your time and for the knowledge that you have shared with us today. Um, uh, we really do appreciate your time here today. And I just wanted to I'm going to close. So we end as we began by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. And we also honor our ancestors, those who toiled without compassion or compensation, and the elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you all so much for being with us today. And thank you so much once again, Tiffany. It was a pleasure to moderate this event and to learn from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day at the conference.
Thank you.